Black Oni.
Love it. Can y'all hear me now? Haha. So, pro streamer, everyone. Yes, it's not a real interview or a real stream unless you've had some type of technical difficulty. Oliver here has seen firsthand my own issues with that before, from the cursor completely disappearing from the screen to parts of the scene that were there yesterday that are no longer there. So, that's part of the process. It's part of what we do here. But I'm gonna shut up for a second to introduce my guest here today, Oliver TC Wayward. You can go follow him on Twitter as well as the Cycle Game on Twitter. So the information is right there. Go do that if you haven't already done so. But how are you doing today, sir?
Great. All considered, with pandemic and all things, but yeah, it's great to be here and to have the opportunity to answer questions and to show what I'm doing on the cycle.
Yes. And a little bit of context for people who may not know already. So the cycle is a game that I've had on my radar for a long time, in different formats in different ways, and we'll go on to discuss a little bit more about like what that's been like and what that whole process has really done and been for you and for the team. So I'm excited to get into the details about that as well. But before we do any of that, who are you? What do you do at Jaeger?
Oh, fine, it's it. Hi, I'm Oliver, aka Wayward, and I am the live producer on the cycle here at Jaeger. And yeah, what I'm actually doing, I am well, for once, I am part of the one of the development teams or one of the feature teams, which is namely called the live team, which is responsible for making sure the infrastructure is holding or is making sure we have matchmaking. Social features, we are working a lot. We work on, well, currently for the future premium shop, or like for buying in-game items, in-game goodies. And as well, one of my responsibilities is to make sure that our releases are actually planned and that they go out in a timely manner with the feature set that we agreed internally, and chasing up that all these features are actually there, that they are tested. So I also have to sync a lot with the QA team. I have to sync a lot with the community managers, that they are aware of what we're actually going live with. I have to sync a lot also with Scredicus in the for working with partners for Twitter, for Twitch, for YouTube, and you name it. So yeah, I'm in the middle of it all and making sure stuff is getting done in a somewhat timely manner and making sure the players can enjoy it.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to be asking a few more questions other than the ones that I sent over to you, just because my kind of interview style is whenever I start getting going and the gears are turning, I have more questions that kind of come up in between that time. So if there's anything that I ask you that you're not comfortable sharing or you can't share yet, no hard feelings, and that goes for the rest of the viewers who are watching right now, as well as who will be watching on the archive as well. So, um, first things first, what even is the cycle? Like, how do you explain this game to someone who's never seen, heard of, or played it?
Okay, what is cycle? Probably the next biggest hit. No, oh well, yes, as well.
Can we get some
So
snaps and chat for that?
very good. So how would you describe it? The cycle is a free-to-play PvP VE shooter with very high stakes and tense uncertainty. So you are a prospector who is basically part of a bigger group of people that go on a wild, uncharted planet called Fortuna 3, and you are doing quests, objectives for one of the three factions. And with fulfilling these objectives, you gain their trust, you gain access to more weapons. Um, different abilities, different attachments to your weapons, gain access to more weapons. Yeah, it's a persistent match, so you can drop in, drop out at somewhat any given time. However, there are also other players. So there's open PvP, and if you die or if you get killed on the planet, you lose nearly everything that you collected during your run, except you have it saved in your safe pockets. And you also have wildlife, so PvE aspects, and also they are deadly, so pay attention to them. And also,
yes, they are.
yeah, good. So it's not only me who died from them.
Yeah.
That's good. Yeah, I think that's it in the gist.
Yeah,
So.
I would say so. It's pretty much a good summation of what the experience is and what it's like. And it leads directly into the next following question, which was, um, how was the concept formulated? Like, how did it? Of course, you can draw comparisons to other games that are out there, right? But how did the team decide on this specific direction?
So how it all started, way back when, so a few years ago we had a internally pitch jam where developers could basically chime in and say, okay, hey, I have this great idea. I would think this is the next big Jaeger game. And it started with a concept phase. It's like, okay, wrote down on paper, very classical. So this is how I would envision it. Then it was presented to a group, people, for example, the company owners, or the higher up management. And if there was a promising candidate, then it was taken to the next step with a bit more broken down, and eventually maybe even some small, very early prototypes. And the cycle is actually one that came out of that, which was one of these projects. And the idea was to basically take these open PvP zones from MMOs and basically turn them into a back then match-based game, and just make it more accessible in a free-to-play manner. And I think once we started a bit more also, and we presented it to first players, the comparison to, for example, the Division Dark Zones came up, or Tarkov, which was at the point when we started unintentionally, but it seems we got into that direction by accident, or by lucky accident, more or less.
Yeah. And is this in regards to like the earlier stages of like the cycle before it became Frontier, or are you talking specifically about Frontier?
I mean, the basic idea is still in, like the basic idea that we even had in the very old version, the very early early prototypes. It's the same thing we now have in the Cycle Frontier. So you have this open PvP and you lose your loot, like you sometimes have in these dark zones, or these open PvP zones in MMOs. We changed for the old cycle from the prototypes to the old cycle, to the old version. We changed it a bit based on feedback and how players liked it, and at some point we realized we also like strayed a bit away from this original concept that we had, and basically decided, okay, the old version is not that sticky as we hoped, as our numbers showed. Actually, also after the seasons, we always had a huge drop. We decided to go back to the drawing board, remind us where we actually started and what we wanted to do with this game, and said, okay, let's now do it the way we really anticipated, really wanted. Have this high stakes, high tension, high uncertainty that gives the opportunity to have very memorable moments, and also like you don't have the same thing over and over again, because every drop can and most likely will be different. You will find different areas, you will have a different loot, you will find different people that you interact with in a friendly or unfriendly way.
Speaking of friendly, unfriendly way, I'm gonna get some more specific things about data and what you found later. But have you seen a lot of players who meet each other like on the drop? Like, do you see a lot of them actually interact with each other in friendly ways, or does that like just never happen?
Happened. So I must admit, I didn't watch all footage from our last closed beta session because there was mainly the time when the live team was making sure that the infrastructure is holding up. But there have been a lot of also footage where players actually work together with each other in a friendly way. It's like, okay, hey, don't shoot. I'm just here to do X, Y, Z. Or it's like, hey, okay, I don't have any loot with me, and the other was, yeah, okay, I don't kill you. Or it's like, okay, can you help me with that? I also seen players actually drop items for other players because they were looking for it, and
Oh,
didn't need it. So it's like there is potential for very friendly and very memorable moments that you find with strangers, and the proximity voice chat actually also helps with that a lot.
yeah, I would say I haven't tried to do it, so maybe it's really my own fault for not trying it. But I always assume that people are just like, I'm in the zone, I'm in this drop zone, I just want to get my loot and shoot people and stuff. So I'm very interested to
Nope.
see how, once we're able to play again, how often I'll be able to actually leverage that and make some friends on the battlefield.
If I find you, let's be friends, okay? I'm
Yes.
really bad at shooting anyway, so
You'll probably still get me. So this is a question that kind of shifts gears a little bit, talking a little bit more about the development, but also a different side of the development than you probably have done a lot of, which is in regard to the art style and art direction. Now,
mhm.
as a player, we're always invested in experiences that are like visually appealing or stimulating in some way. So finding a art style that does that while still having its own identity can be really challenging. How did the team decide on its art style and art direction, and where will it go based on at least what you can say?
Yeah. Um, I mean, there was no point where we say, okay, this is it. So this is the thing. We would just always do that. Like with a lot of the development processes, it's an ongoing process. The first um, illustrations on the first concepts were actually done quite close to the first prototype to basically see what could fit. So our idea was from the very beginning to have this wonderful, colorful alien planet that you really want to find out every corner of it, and that of course also needs a bit of stylization. So just hyper realism at every corner is would have been harming in this regard.
Hmm.
So we wanted to have this vibrant world, bright colors, and when the storm hit, which was in the old version the end of the match, that it really just turns around into this visually threatening planet that you say, okay, I really need to get out of here because everything around me is just really hostile at this point.
Yeah.
And we also decided to move to the new version, to the Cycle Frontier, together with the overall tone of the game. Also, the art style had to become a bit more um, dangerous. Wouldn't say like a more mature, a tad bit darker, while still be this nice planet that is there that you want to check and you just don't feel threatened every minute. Um, but also during the nature of us basically transitioning fluidly, we couldn't, of course, throw away all the old assets. So we took the old assets, either kept them because they were really great, or we started tweaking them a bit to fit to the new tone. And this is still not done. So, and I would be surprised if this would be done in the next years or 2 years. It's, as with anything, it's an ongoing process. And but you still will have this planet that you want to check out, that you think it's not doom and gloom everywhere. You have these bright wood and jungle areas, but you also have these eerie swamp areas. So you have really this change between these areas there.
Yeah, and I think that that's one of the most more striking things about the game. Like aside from the fact that it's a Dark Zone Tarkov style game that's a little bit more of a vibrant flavor, but also because of the storm, because there's like a shift and something changes, it changes the feel and mood of the game while you're playing it as well. So, all that checks out to me. It makes sense, and it sounds like exactly what the team was going for. So that's really cool that we get to experience that even from like the ground floor level of like the development process. So thanks for that. Uh, with regards to infrastructure, because this is more of your specialty and more of what you focus on specifically, what have you learned that will help the team improve the network and the overall experience for players throughout these past few testing
Mm.
phases?
I mean, the biggest learning is that we didn't expect the amount of players that were actually coming in. So all of the logs, all of the crashes, everything that more or less was provided by the players unwantingly, but that's why it was a beta, solved us finding areas in our infrastructure. Um, where say, okay, if we ever hit a certain amount of players, it will not go higher because there were technical limitations. And so in the last few weeks and months, we were actually finding ways to overcome these technical limitations. And we also work together quite a lot with third parties that could support us because, I mean, the whole backend infrastructure is not done by us. We use PlayFab, and they, of course, are specialists. They have different games that potentially run into similar issues.
Yeah.
So why not asking them as like, okay, so how or what would be a smart way of solving these technical limitations? And there are things with, I mean, one prominent example would be we had issues in the CB1 with the friends list and with the squads. This was because the servers, CNR, it's what it's called, was overloaded.
Mm.
And we found out that there's a technical limitation that we would have maximum be able to hit, I think it was 100,000 players. And I mean, of course, on some point we want to be bigger than that. So we had to find a way of, okay, what can we do to go over the technical limitation of Signal R and find other ways to say, okay, we can go to 200,000, 300,000, whatever number. So all these um, problems that we had, although they were bad for the players, really made us also reevaluate and replan some of our features. So we, especially for the live team, we had to throw out some features that we were planned originally and say, okay, we need to focus on getting the infrastructure right.
Yeah.
So whatever feature we will have, if players can't play, it doesn't matter.
Yes.
So
I
that's
respect that decision and
yeah.
I agree with it, but I'm also now very curious about what those features, or at least maybe some of those features, might have been. And, from our own perspective, would that have even made the experience better or would it have made it worse? That's always a curious thing. So, is there anything that you can tell us about a feature that didn't make it that you personally was really looking forward to? Uh,
um, no, because they will come in the future.
okay.
So
Okay.
they would be spoilering. So as soon as we have something more in the plans, then it will be shared.
Okay. That's
I get to you
understandable.
once these features are announced, then I tell you that was one of these ones.
Okay, perfect. I'll be hitting you up about that. Like, hey, is this one of those ones you couldn't say anything about?
Yep, let's do that.
I see someone in chat mentioned a bug reporter feature.
Well, that was turned off for a different reason.
I'm sure there
But
were plenty
that
of
is
bugs.
also planned. Spoiler, it's planned to be at least iterated upon. So of course, we want players to also be able to report bugs going forward. However, the bug reporter solution that we had in the old cycle is also not scalable.
Mm,
So we have to sit together and find a way, together with the QA lead and with the coders and also with the community managers, actually, on how we can find a way to give players the option to just be in the game and say, okay, here I have a bug, I want to report it, but with the option of having the scalability. So it's only because it can support 100 players doesn't mean it can support thousands of players, and might even kill again the infrastructure. So
yeah.
it's always these balance that we have to find.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of balance and speaking of what you're able to find, I had asked a question earlier with regards to player behavior.
Mhm.
And what were, one of your jobs is to kind of look at the data and see like how people are actually interacting with the game itself. What has been the most interesting or surprising thing that you found based on what you've observed from the data about what we as players do or like?
Only that, but I mean, I wouldn't say unexpected. The thing which always I find interesting and what boggles my mind sometimes, like how creative players are of breaking the game.
Oh,
So it's also a statistics. Um, we have internal QA team, and we can't test the feature for a month. You let one player play it for 5 minutes, and the thing will be completely broken. So just because it's a way different mindset that testers have than to compare to players. So I think that's something that continuously amazes me, and also in any footage, if there's any bugs, it's like, how the heck did they get there?
yeah.
So this is one thing. But to be a more bit serious, more one thing that we figured out is that, like based on data, that very few people are using the what's it called, the safety containers. So I think with a few of the designers today about that. So yeah, it's one thing that we have to make sure that in the next beta, the safety containers are more visible. Um, yeah, and also weapon usage, of course.
Mm.
Creative ways that players use and abuse weapons and attachments, uh, as well as like we can test these connectivity between weapon attachment and different weapons for weeks and months. Players get there. It's like, oh, okay, what should if it happens? This is like, oh, okay, overbalanced. Damn it.
Yeah, you could spend an entire month like working on each possible combination and still miss something. So it's also, from like what we were talking about before, being behind the scenes and being at the front. A lot of the times players don't realize that like things do slip through the cracks sometimes. So it's really important for us to, say something whenever we notice something like that. So
Yep.
it's good to hear that it's still an ongoing process of balancing and tweaking and learning. Um, with regards
We're
to
always
that,
happy about that.
say that again.
We're always happy to receive these feedback and to receive these bugs. So that there were some very good bug hunters already in the community that never got tired of just say, okay, I found this one, I broke this, this is how I did it. And the clearer also the players communicate that to us, the easier it is for us to in the end to fix it or to change that. So that's why it's I'm very grateful that we have so many players that are really invested into that and are eager to provide us these information in a friendly and constructive way.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've noticed from the community as well, there aren't as many how you say angry keyboard warriors, just angry at the game. It's more so like, all right, we see where you're going, we see what you're doing. Here's what I found.
Yep.
So, congrats to the community overall. I haven't seen a lot of the typical toxicity that you tend to see. So hopefully that continues on. But people will be people. Uh, with regards to questing, I
Mhm.
asked this question mostly because when playing Tarkov, again, not to directly compare this game to that, but I
Mhm.
believe the quests are in a way very similar,
Yep.
but a little clearer in the cycle versus how they are in Tarkov. How are those determined for certain gear, and what's that process like? Like I can kind of sit here and imagine that, like, all right, we want to give players this really cool thing, but we also don't want to just like give it to them. We want to make them work for it, but we don't want them to work so hard that they no longer want it anymore. Like, what's that process like?
Mhm. So, I mean, for the next closed beta, we will have our quest system a bit reworked. So we will have a somewhat overarching campaign for the factions,
Okay,
and
cool.
the way the weapons will be attached there. So we took, of course, the ones that are very faction specific and put them into narratively good places in the campaign. Because, as I said, the idea of the fantasy is that you're working for a faction, and with working for them, you're building trust. And of course, in the beginning, they will give you the scrappy ones because, like, they have no idea who you are, and you wouldn't give any good weapon to any stranger.
It's
Um,
true.
so the more quests you do for them, the more reputation you gain in a way, and also the more they give you better weapons. But they then also, want to make sure that you are in working with the world a bit more, so you get to the more dangerous areas, so you can do more dangerous stuff for them, and in return get the more dangerous rewards. Um, but yeah, this is basically the overall idea of it, and other than that, for more details, you would need to ask, for example, Rumble or the activities team. But this is just the overarching idea behind these.
Okay, that's very exciting. I actually didn't know that that was in the pipeline, so it's cool to get some kind of narrative feedback to go alongside that while you're trying to gear up. Very cool. So that leads direct. I feel like I'm getting really good at this. Leads directly into the question about attachments and what items are available, and I'm sure the headache that comes with that.
Headache?
What
What?
when I played last, I noticed there were a bunch of different attachments,
Mhm.
barrels, grips, and, sights. What other kinds of attachments are you looking to expand on, and kind of like what's the rarity of those attachments, if that makes sense?
Okay, for the rarity, I can't tell too much yet.
Okay,
So what we are looking for adding for attachments is, well, very plainly, like more optics for the weapon, so you can zoom in a bit better. Um, I think for other attachments, we are for now, at least in the plans for closed beta, done with adding more. So of course there will be more in the future. That's still planned.
yeah.
But for the next beta, there's like mainly optics, but also the team is looking for adding more helmets that are quite similar to how the armor is working. So different varieties of helmets. And I think that's mainly it from more new items for now.
Okay, very cool. So I see, we can't say too much about what's to come, but um, I'm very interested to see what other kinds of attachments we'll see as well. Just because I'm kind of like a uh, that's one of the most fun things about looting in
Mhm.
general is like seeing what else can I find, what else can I add, what else can I tweak to make it just right for myself. Um, I don't remember if there was a firing range or not.
Nope. I mean, it was in the old version. It's not in the new version yet.
Okay, big emphasis on
It
yet.
might
So
come in the it might come in the future, but right now we are really focusing on making sure we have our features that are really, really needed for the next beta. And I personally, I think we can live for a bit without the shooting range.
okay,
In comparison to, for example, making the infrastructure more stable
yeah.
and having a very better polished experience.
So
But
with
you never
regard,
know. Might come in the future.
okay, awesome. with regards to more stable, more polished, more refined, what else can you do from your end to ensure that that is the case? I mean, obviously, getting more server farms and access to more servers can help with that, but like, what other things are there from a back end perspective that we don't really know about as players?
So what is there more? I mean, of course, like for making sure it's more stable and is also like working on the anti-cheating because also like if for whatever reason cheats are there, of course they put an additional strain on the servers or the
Hmm.
infrastructure that is of course not anticipated. I mean,
To an extent,
um,
yeah.
to the extent so. Um, that is one of the options. There's another option to change the servers itself from a development server where a lot of logging runs in the background to a so-called chipping server, whereas like there's less logging and ideally the performance is a bit better. So the idea is also that there are less crashes, um, and making the whole infrastructure more secure or having a fail safes in case okay there something happens, okay then at least it doesn't take the whole pipeline down but just has a small hiccup and then continues.
Gotcha. And I see some questions flooding in from chat. I'm going to do my best to ask at least some of those questions closer towards the end of the questions that I had. So if you have questions that haven't been addressed in any way yet, um, stay tuned. I do plan to at least ask some of these, but I also have to respect Oliver's time and the team over at Jaeger as well. So, Jaeger.
Oh, it's fine.
But the next question that I have is um, matchmaking. I can't I can't imagine that this aspect of development is easy in any way. Mostly because there were a variety of different factors at play. Like you mentioned before, there are people who go on whatever game that they want and they try to cheat, and that kind of skews all the data regardless.
Yep.
Um, and then there's the aspect of people who just want to play alone. They don't necessarily want to like try to coordinate with friends to find time to play together. They just want to jump on and have a good time. And then you have the people who I'm sure many of the people in chat are like this as well, where they get their friends together and they go on these like big raids and stay on the map for extended periods of time and just explore as much as they can before they extract. How how do you address that? How do you like figure out how to make the experience enjoyable for everybody?
No, of course we have a plan behind that. So right now, as you may have heard, we have a NVR rating, so net value rating, which is basically the median. But I need to actually read it because it's so the median ratio from your starting gear to the gear you evacuate with. So this is one of the ratings that we do.
Hmm.
But what the most important thing that we always want to make sure is that people don't have long waiting queues. If we just would have these NVR rating, people would be scattered all around the place, and
Hmm.
you would have waiting times from 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 minutes before you really have to make sure that people in your range are there, even if you expand the range on a certain time. So what we do is we take a certain adjustable percentage that just goes on the server. So a new server starts, a certain percentage just goes in, no matter what of the NVR rating you have. And at this point, when this percentage is full, we take the average from the server, and then people with the right median get onto it. So of course, it will happen that people that play alone will be on the server that play with squads, which is, of course, but also part of the original intention that we have of these tense uncertainty with every match. So you might run into a solo player, but you also may run into a full squad. And you can, of course, try to attack the squad because you are way higher geared, or you're just like, oh nope, okay, I'll take the other way route and just go somewhere else. Um, so that is still in tension, and what I can also tell you, it's also quite heavily discussed in the community, but also internally. And if I'm not completely mistaken, the last survey said something like between 50-50 of have squad only matchmaking or no matchmaking the way this is fine. So it's still a bit of we have to continue putting it out in front of players, but right now we don't see a really a benefit of saying okay we have only squad matchmaking or we only have solo matchmaking, because again you fracture your community, you may have again longer waiting times, and this is the one thing you don't want to. You want to make sure you are in the game, you get on a planet, you can play without any kind of queuing time.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that makes sense. That's a pretty satisfying answer. When the first time I played the more recent version, I was thinking to myself, I had someone else queued to play with me as well, but they were having issues with it running on their computer. So I was like, well, I got to do this alone. Let's see how this is going to go. It changes the way you have to approach every situation because now you're like, all right, if I make too much noise, I don't have someone there to back me up. But if I don't take the initiative to do things, like I won't get anything out of it. So if you haven't tried, once people are able to play again, if you haven't tried solo queuing yet, I would recommend trying it at least once just to see what the difference of doing that versus like having protection in a way does for you as a player.
I would
Now,
also recommend.
say that again.
I would also recommend doing that.
Yes,
Really changes the whole game
yeah, it
or
does.
the feel of it, basically.
I asked about the stability and stuff. Um, I didn't ask specifically about netcode itself and what that process of refinement is like. We talk. I talk a lot, especially about fighting games and their netcode, and like when their netcode is bad, it's extremely noticeable. Versus games that have really like strong netcode, which is very noticeable as a positive thing. What? How hard is it to do that?
How hard is that? Probably one of our coders could be very much better explaining the whole thing on a very technical level, but it's not easy. However, we are constantly having internal playtests as well, at least twice a week with the whole team, which serves two purposes. One is to make sure everyone who's working on the game actually also sees what they're working on and how everything comes together, and feedback internally, find bugs, but also to get performance profiles. So that's what it's called. So at certain points in the game, then we take a snapshot of what's currently going on performance wise, and then coders and technical artists can do their magic
Adjust
and
as need
find
be.
yeah, and find okay there is a function that takes longer than it should be. So they look at it, say why does it take longer, and try to erase that, and then the next playtest doing the same thing or ideally the same circumstances, taking another performance profile. Did it improve? Did it break something else? And you can do that for the client, but you also can do that for the server client connection. And this is how we find that. But also, there's a lot of things that are more or less out of the box when working with the Unreal Engine. So it's also what we are utilizing. So there's of course always room for improvements, as most people know that they played betas and also played the old version. Sometimes it goes better, sometimes it goes worse. Um, but overall, we're really trying to get these performance as often tested as possible by as many different specifications of the PCs or under different network conditions. Uh, but again, it's like You can't test it for months. You put it live. There's one
Someone
specification
breaks
that
it.
nobody has before seeing, and it just completely breaks the whole thing.
Yeah.
But still ongoing, the TA department and the coding departments are really focused on these because we also have performance data from the betas and the alphas and want to improve this and make sure we always have a as smooth as possible experience for players.
Yeah. And shout out to the hard coders and QA testers who have to figure that stuff out. Like, again, and shout out to you, of course, for being on the team to address that as well. It's not something that you think of a lot when you are playing a game that does it well because it's doing that well and it's already kind of gone through all that. So, the utmost respect for it because um, I'm not a coder. I'm an artist. So I'm the guy that they're like, all right, tone this down so that we can get this to work. Like, if you figured that out, like, I'm happy to just do it.
Yeah. Yep, sounds familiar.
Yep. Now, we kind of talked about one of these other questions already, so I'll skip that. How will character customization evolve throughout the experience?
It will be better. So, of course, I mean, right now we still have a very, very basic, or not even character customization. It's really just converting the system that we had. So, of course, going forward, there will be more character customization options. We will have new archetypes. So, right now there's the ones from the old game, which are still the more, I mean, that sounds wrong, more goofy ones in comparison.
Okay.
So the next ones will be a bit more serious. Also, all these in the old version we had like this very bright and colorful and sparkly vanity options or character customization options, which in the new version might put you into a slight disadvantage if
Yeah.
you're a glowing light bulb in the middle of the night and everyone can okay, there it is, shoot. Um, so of course, players that played the old version, they will get the vanity that they bought over to the new version. But everything we will create from now on will also be in line with the new tone of being a bit more serious, being a bit more darker. Um, that, yeah, but still, the vibrant but nice things, but still a bit more toned down and not just shiny, sparkly.
Yeah. Yeah. So maybe just a little bit more serious, but not necessarily too gloomy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Serious but not dark and gritty. And so
Yeah.
it will be a nice mix. Pretty sure.
Nice. Very cool. And we talked a little bit about the previous version, the version that we have now, the kind of evolution and changes, and you just mentioned just now some of the vanity options and customization options. What was the cycle like before we got to where we're at now? I know there's like I can talk to chat about that, but from your perspective,
I mean, the old cycle was. I mean, I explained what the new cycle is. Being the PvPvE shooter with high tension. The old version was a free-to-play PvEVP first-person competitive quest shooter royale. Sorry, I had to bring this in from the Gamescom trailer. In comparison to the new version. So back then you had the 20-minute match. God damn it, it's been a while. I think it was 20 players, 18 players, 20 players. Oh, that been on the planet at the same time. They
yeah,
were racing towards their objectives and try to get the highest number.
yep,
And then before the storm hits, try to evacuate, which was tremendous fun. I must admit, I really loved it. Also, especially since there was very high mobility, very fast gameplay.
yeah,
Um, it's as I said, like it really just didn't stick, and because it was always in a way the same race that you were running towards. You had the same, well, same players, I would say, is wrong. It just always felt the same. So if you knew where it was, you just ran there without anything or any big hindrances, and it just felt very samely, and you just didn't have this long-term motivation. And you also couldn't lose anything. So
It's true.
while the old version had a lot of nice things, you could buy weapons in the game. You had this very fast movements. You had the jetpack, the double jump, and so on.
And you can use
And
points
it
to buy
felt
stuff
like,
while you're on the map, right?
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, and why this is nice for maybe an hour or two, it just really lacks the long-term appeal which the new version is supposed to bring. So you're working something towards against. You have something to lose, so you really pay attention of what you're doing, and you have memorable moments, different moments, because every drop is ideally different.
Yeah. It's a lot more intentional things that you have to do in the matches now. And like you, I also enjoyed the old version as well. For a different reason. It was a definitely like a different style of
Mm.
pace, right? It was I would go as far to say it was just like a fast paced,
Yeah,
like balls to the walls, just get crazy type of thing. Uh,
pretty much. Yeah.
yeah. Do you think there is room for an experience like that within the cycle, whether it's like a lore wise, it's like a VR or AR, room that people go into and just like kind of just go crazy and have fun type of thing, or what do you imagine as like maybe a possible potential to like bring a little bit of that flavor back in?
If you ask me personally, I would love to,
Yeah,
but um, as mentioned, I don't think it will really fit to what we anticipate or what we want to do with this game.
yeah,
But to be quite honest, the cycle is planned to run for years and years and years, and right now I can't see in the future.
yeah,
If, if we find a good way to make this work with our tone, and that we don't try to have two games at the same time, and then if you try both of them to do great, then none of them will really work out.
yeah.
So if you ask me personally, I would find that great to have this change between, but I don't think it would be great for the overall game as it is and what we plan with it.
Yeah, that makes sense. Sometimes you can't have it all. Sometimes you have to be focused and intentional with what you do. So I feel you. Uh, the last question that I have for you, from my perspective, and I'll say a few of the ones that are in chat as well. What can you tell us about potential, maybe, possibly release dates or next beta phase or like next play test?
I could say a lot because I have all of them in my head mostly. But no, it, I'm very sorry. I'm still sticking to the official. We have the plans for the next beta. We are working towards it, and we still plan them for the latest end of Q1. The reason why we wouldn't give a very definite date at this point is, as I mentioned before, is like it would be, of course, great if we say, okay, it will be done on this day. But right now, we're really focusing on making sure we actually have a rounded up and polished gameplay experience. And so it's basically, do you want to have a definite date, or do you want to have a great game that you enjoy? So once this date is really see, okay, this is really crystallizing out, and we will have our planned experience done at this point, then we will announce it. Otherwise, we just announce an arbitrary date and then we maybe move it because stuff
Things
happens,
happen. Yeah. Yep.
and then everyone is disappointed. So right now we are still more at the we're aiming for somewhere there.
That
So,
makes
but as
sense.
soon as everything is clearer, of course, they will be announced on all the channels, be it Twitter, Facebook, TikTok, what else is out there. We'll probably find ways to broadcast it everywhere. And in worst case, just check our Discord, and there it will be. as soon. Probably one of the first points will be Discord to find out when the next beta is or when the next playtests are.
I gotcha. That covers all the questions that I have. I do see some questions in chat that I would like to ask at least a few of these, if that's all right with you. So the first question that I want to do, I just lost where it was now. Y'all have been chatting in here, so I appreciate that. But now I have lost where the question was. Oh, someone asked, "What is the favorite station on Fortuna?" I think that was the question.
Favorite station on Fortuna?
Let me go back to it and see which sport. Which sport is popular on Fortuna Station.
Which sport? Of course, billiard or pool or whatever it's called.
Yeah.
I really want that at one point. Would be great to have that as a mini game.
That would be very cool.
Or just maybe football would be a bad idea. I mean, there's still glass around, so maybe nothing that could potentially harm the integrity of the Fortuna Station.
Yeah, right. So, no lacrosse, maybe.
Maybe paintball. That would probably be nice.
Yeah.
You're a big station, and you have shooting practices. Open paintball in the station.
Yes.
I think that would be a good sport.
I mentioned some people said the weapon balancing is a constant process, few bug fixes. I think I asked most of the questions while we were going as well. But yeah, if there are any other questions that people have in the chat, please do let me know. Anyone know if we have a new map to try for the next test?
Yes, I know. Probably not.
Okay. So that's actually a really good question because I've considered different maps and new maps, but not necessarily in the beta. And I know for certainty, like once you introduce a new map, now you've kind of like all of those other problems that you had in the other map that you've solved are now new problems on a new map because it's all new geometry, all new data that's going in, all new potentials for bugs and falling through the level. So I completely get it, but I'm very interested to see what another map would look like.
I mean, the only thing I can say is that, of course, eventually we plan to bring out new maps. Will it be for the next beta? Nope.
Okay.
Like, pretty much nope. We still have to make sure the first two are actually working and nicely traversable and have loot and, AI spawning. So there's a lot of setup, so it's not only having the map there, but it's also making sure it's actually playable and feels alive.
Yeah.
So that takes a lot of fine-tuning and playtesting.
Yeah. Narf Boy, the question was asked earlier when the next closed beta release date is. We don't have information about exactly when that will be, but as soon as they know, they'll be able to relay that to us, and we'll get to know. Ooh, who destroyed Fortuna 2? Lord, you can't say anything about it.
So there was this one time all of QA went on the planet, and then we had to move to a different one. We found a crash bug there.
That's all. That's
one.
it. That's all you got. Another question was, are you planning to add customization and stuff to apartment spaces other than leveling it up?
Right now, it's not on a plan or not on a roadmap for the near future. But same answer. We ideally go with the cycle for years and years. So right now, I would say it's not a roadmap. Is it completely off the table? I don't think so.
Okay.
But
not a priority.
Not priority.
Yeah.
Not priority.
Gotcha. Are there any plans for making spawns one way to prevent spawn? Wait, I'm gonna ask the question differently because I'm a little confused by that. Um, are there any specific plans to prevent spawn camping or spawn killing? I haven't played the game extensively enough to notice any patterns with regards to spawning, but maybe some other players have. Are there plans to combat that?
Whew. Um,
That's a hard
I mean,
question.
yeah. I mean, in the old cycle, we had, the spawn protection that for the first few seconds you had this bubble shield around you. Still, people found ways to also make sure that to exploit that, and it still was possible to have the spawn camping. Um, I think a lot of it will, I, ideally, be solved with making sure the spawn points are, slightly spread out, and you would like to have to run from one end to the other to actually find it. Um, I would have to lie if I would say that there are specific plans.
Okay,
Uh, Maybe one of the designers knows better, or Days, our creative director, knows better. But just from top of my head, looking at the latest roadmap, nothing specifically mentioning spawn camping. Although, of course, if it happens, it is, I think, in our prospector code that it shouldn't be done. So I think this is one. If you do it repeatedly and you get reported for it, then there's most likely a way that you will be have a time ban.
okay,
Um, so
gotcha.
it's again a lot of this reporting if it happens.
Yeah.
Um,
Uh,
of course there are always ways that it can happen, but there are creative ways to prevent that outside of full feature development.
Yeah, someone in chat mentioned that they did see it before, but it was a bug and it wasn't something that like it was reliably repeatable. So
Mhm.
that's uh, promising. I was looking for the word, I couldn't think of it. That's promising.
I know that
Uh,
feeling.
I think that is all that I see in terms of the big questions that people have. If I miss any of them, please let me know. That way I can ask the question in the future, or we can discuss it in Discord as well. I am in several Discord channels. I'm pretty sure I'm in the one for Cycle as well, but if you want to be in my own Discord and talk about all things Cycle, you can do so as well there. But obviously, you're going to get the official information from the Cycle game through their Discord, through their social media, and through their website as well. So make sure you go follow TC Wayward as well as the Cycle game to be informed and up to date on everything that is going on with the Cycle. And before we head out, first of all, thank you again for your time. I know that
Thank you
uh,
for doing that.
yeah,
Thank you for
yeah,
the
it's
question.
a really great interview, and I learned a lot of things about the process, about the bones that make this game, but also about like future plans and things that I might not have considered before. But is there anything else you'd like to say to folks before we bring this to a close?
I mean, other than, hey, I'll see all of you on Fortuna 3 for the next beta, and I'm looking forward for any feedback for the game. I'm looking forward for any bugs that you find, any weirdness. Please post them in our Discord. The whole team loves that, especially these wacky moments or these very memorable moments. It's really loved by the whole team, and the more people there are, the better it is. So,
Yes.
go on.
Someone in chat asked the official game Discord. Let me see if I can just pull that up for you real quick. Oh, here it is. Perfect. Dude, Straticus, you are
Yep.
the best. I didn't even have to look for it. He was like, I got you. It's right here. Perfect. There goes. There it is right there. The official Discord for the Cycle. Go check that out if you haven't already. There's tons of awesome people in there. And yeah, we will see you all very soon. Once I'm able to get some more hands-on time with the Cycle, I'll be streaming that as well. Again, because I was in middle of a move, I only got to play it a little bit while the last test cycle for the Cycle was going on. So I'm excited now that I'm at least here for a little while until we move to our house. Um, can get on it. But thank you again, Oliver. Thank you everyone in chat for being here. And I will see you all. I'll be streaming again later today. And what do you know when y'all will be having your next live stream or
Friday, it came from the left side, potentially.
okay. So Friday, we can expect to maybe see some more from the development team. But kudos, everyone. Bye.